where do you start with your wedding budget? Well, it is a big job to keep on top of your wedding budget and decide what your wedding budget is in the first place. So this video, I'm going to look at both those things. So we'll jump into how to actually manage your budget at the end of the video. First up, let's look at the things you need to consider before you even start to create that budget. So where do you get started when you're planning your wedding budget? Here's a kind of timeline overview, and then we'll jump into a wedding budget planner to have a look at how you would actually go about doing that. So first of all, you want to think about what your financial situation is and determine what you can realistically afford to spend on your wedding. So be honest with yourself and your partner about your financial situation and what you can comfortably afford, because I think so many people start off married life in so much debt. So you really want to think about what you're willing to spend before you start to set a budget. Secondly, you want to make a priority list and think about the things that are most important to you and your partner. So what elements of the wedding are most important to you? Is it the people who are there and you don't really mind about the venue? Is dress and suit really important to you and your partner, or are those kind of low down on the priority list? So prioritize all the elements that go into making up your wedding, with the most important one at the top, so that you really know what's going to be most important for allocating budget later on. The third thing you want to do is research. So wherever it is you want to get married, whether it's in your local area or whether you're wanting to travel somewhere else, do some research on what the average wedding costs are for a wedding in your area or travel to that destination. And so this will give you a good idea of how much you should expect to spend on each element of your wedding. So a casual wedding with a lot of people is going to cost a lot less per head than a formal wedding with the same number of people. So the number of guests paired with the type of wedding that you want to have are going to impact your budget as well. And the last thing you want to think about is any hidden costs. So that could be wedding insurance, making sure you have a contingency. If you're in a country where you would traditionally tip vendors, that doesn't really happen where I live, but I know it happens in the US. You want to have all that thought about when you're setting your budget up front so that you don't forget about things. Also postage, if you're ordering things online, that's one a lot of people forget about as well. So once you've kind of considered these things and worked out what you're looking for and what you can afford, you want to use a spreadsheet or a planner to break down your budget and to help keep you organised as you're planning your wedding. So let's jump into my planner and have a look at that now. Okay, so we're in a wedding planner here in Notion, which is available online. And you can work on Notion on desktop, or they have an app where you can work on tablet or phone as well. So I'm going to scroll past this top bit because that's where once I've got my budget kind of filled in. I'm going to look at the master budget planner here. So this is essentially a spreadsheet where I've split my table into categories based on the categories that you would plan out for a wedding and allocate budget to. And I've put in here what my total budget is. So this is just the same number carried on throughout the table so that my budget can work out calculations. I've just taken 28,000 because that's what the average budget is in the US for a wedding. So then what I've done, based on the priorities that I worked out already, is I've allocated budget to all the different categories based on my priorities. So some of them are 0% because it's not a priority for me. You might want to add things in that aren't here that are a priority to you and allocate budget to those. Then what I would do before going further is I would look at what the budget allocation is based on the percentage and see if that is realistic within the research that I've done for where I want to get married. Is there something available within that budget? And if there isn't, I might want to relook at my plans. Maybe I'm not being realistic based on my budget, or I might want to look at reallocating percentages to make things make more sense. So I would do that before I move on to the next stage. And then what I would do once I'm happy with that is I would look at these as individual budgets. So I'm going to open catering as an example here. And this, don't worry about any of this here. You want to scroll down to your category budget for catering. So I've already input a few things here. I've put meals, drinks and canapes, and I've allocated a percentage of my catering budget to those things. So this adds up to 100% just now. Here's my budget allocation. And then let's say I've gone out and got quotes and decided who I want to go with. And these are my actual costs. As you can see, it's coming in $300 under budget. So what I could then do is I could add something in that I was maybe wanting but didn't think I could afford if it's within that budget, or I could just leave this at under budget and maybe use it elsewhere where I might be going over budget slightly, or just spend less on my wedding. Then what I can also do is when I'm looking for quotes from suppliers, I can add them in here. You just click and choose a file to add to your attachment. So when you're sent quotes, you can save them to your budget, and you can do that before you decide and before you fill in your actual item cost. And if you have to pay a deposit, you can keep track of how much you've paid, and this will work out how much you've still got outstanding, so you can keep an eye on your cash flow, which I shall show you in a second. So when you fill all that in your category budget, it pulls everything through to what your actual cost is based on the quotes you've decided to go with, what you've paid to date, and what you've still got outstanding. So you can see that all by category in your master budget, and then up the top here you can see what you've paid to date, which is 2,600. You don't need to worry about any of these to get that sum. These just pull through, so you don't need to look at them. And then you've got your still outstanding as well, so you can see that you've still got to pay 5,380. And so that's a good way to keep on top of just what your cash flow is, what's going on within each category, and kind of start with your overall budget and allocating based on your priorities, and then breaking those priorities down by category so that it's not too overwhelming and that you kind of got lots of budgets, mini budgets within your big budget to help keep you organised. So if you would like to use this template, I will leave a link to it in my shop in the description of the video. So the vibe of your wedding can really impact the budget that you're creating for your wedding, and impact how much it's going to cost you per guest and what venue you choose, and so many things start with the kind of vibe and feel that you want for your wedding. So if you want to be able to keep on top of how you communicate that vision for your wedding and keep on top of it for yourself as well as other people, I recommend you watch this video next.